Welcome to Confessions of a Wannabe It Girl. I'm your host, Marley Freygang, and I'm here to help you filter out all the bullshit and become the next It Girl. This podcast explores the reality of what it really takes to make it out there. As it turns out, it is way less Instagrammable than I thought it was going to be. I'm still very much a work in progress, but there's simply nothing else I'd rather be doing than chasing my dreams. So let's learn from my mistakes and work together to achieve our dreams with more confidence, clarity, and direction. Let's get after it. Hi guys, and welcome back to Confessions of a Wannabe It Girl. Today I am sitting down with Wold, and we are diving into a million different things, but thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited because I don't know if you're going to love or hate this term. You're kind of like an OG influencer.
I mean, I'm here for the term. I fully own it. I was my bit that is not that good of a joke, but I think it's funny as I was one of the founding fathers of social media and founding fathers of Instagram. So yeah, I'm here for it.
So yeah, you're here for it.
Yeah.
I love it. So let's talk about, you started in the confidence and wellness space.
Yep.
But when did this become a business? How did we get to be a founding father?
Accidentally, to be honest. It was a long road. As of us recording this, I just passed my 11-year Instaversary, if you will. I made my first post on the same account I still have now in October of 2012. And back then, Instagram was Square photo app. And you just took the photo, put the Valencia filter on it, and put a few hashtags and called it a day. There were no videos, no Instagram stories. Everything was Square. That was it. Right. And yeah, it was still the little brown logo, vintage, very vintage. And I just started my page as an accountability diary. Honestly, I didn't have very good motives for this. This definitely came from an unhealthy, unbalanced place. But back in the day, I started as an accountability diary for my clean eating and my workouts. And back then, everyone wanted a thigh gap. Everyone wanted to be skinny. And so it was my little fitness diary for that stuff. And I just started sharing my workouts. I was sharing my meals. I've always loved cooking. So I started sharing my clean eating, I'm doing air quotes, clean eating versions of my favorite foods and stuff like that. And I just accidentally started building an audience. I think I hit 10,000 followers within 6 months because it was so not saturated. There was no such thing as influencers. Bloggers were a bit of a thing, but the term influencer didn't even exist yet. So I didn't know that I was doing that, but I just started growing a community, and eventually I sold these clean eating recipe ebooks, cookbooks for I think $7 each. And there was no one taught me how to do it. There was no YouTube tutorial on how to sell an ebook. I just figured it out because it seemed cool. I saw someone else do it and I didn't know how they did it, but I was that's a good idea. I'm going to start packaging out my recipes. I think people will buy them. And then I made a few $1,000s that summer selling my little ebooks. And I was also nannying at the time in the summer. And I made as much money selling these recipe ebooks as I had been making nannying, which turns out if you do the math, I was making half minimum wage, nannying all summer, but whatever. So I made more money than I made nannying. I was oh, this could kind of be something. And so that was the first light bulb moment where I was oh, this could be cool. But I just kept doing it regardless of whether or not it was going to make me money because I loved it. I loved creating. I loved documenting my day. I loved the creative side and the artistic side and editing photos and making graphics and writing. I just love the process too. So I would have done it for free. And then over the years, that really evolved into being one of the OG health and fitness influencers. And I would get flown all over the world to go to expos and to do brand photo shoots. And I was a spokesmodel for bodybuilding.com. And I was a sponsored athlete for supplement companies and apparel companies. And it was a very cool era. Not without, I know we're going to talk about this in a bit, but not without its downsides for sure. But that was very cool. And by the time I graduated college, I was making like a full-time income just from working with brands, like just from affiliate commission, from brand partnerships. And that was when I was kind of faced with that decision of like, well, do I still want that corporate job and that like closet full of J. Crew that I've always been dreaming of? Or do I want to keep
the corporate job? Like, what had you been studying?
I had been studying marketing and business. So like I've always been very business minded. Like I've always been really nerdy about marketing and like buyer behavior and branding. And so I thought I was just going to go like corporate marketing. I have 2 degrees in marketing and international business. I also have a Spanish minor that's just getting very rusty, but yeah, so I was going to go into like corporate marketing girly, and I was hoping to have a job that could let me travel for work. And now I do that, but just on my own. Yeah.
So you're like staring at, being a student making a full working salary and this job, and you just take the leap to stick with content.
Yes, because I remember I was sitting in one of my marketing classes and like looking out the window, and my marketing professor is doing an exercise with us, kind of preparing us. I think it was senior year. So she's trying to like prepare us to like leave the nest and go into the world. And she's like, okay, everyone, I want you to write on this Post-it the salary you're hoping to make when you get your first job out of college. And so I'm already making like 50, 60K a year from like brand deals and influencer stuff just for funsies, like as my like passion project. And don't get me wrong, it was a lot of work. I also was doing YouTube at that time and doing some like additional work with some of the brands that I was working with. Like I did work my ass off, but it was fun. Like I was enjoying myself. So it didn't feel like a job. And so anyway, I write on my Post-it 100K because I'm like, that's the only way that's like worth like that feels worth it. And like anything less like doesn't feel worth it if I'm making this with what I'm doing now. And everyone turns their Post-its in and she's reading off like 50K, 55K, 60K, 57. Like all of them are like in like the 50, 60K range. And she's like, oh, 100K. I like how you think. And like mine's kind of the outlier. And I'm just like, okay. And it's anonymous, so like no one knows it's me. But she's like, yeah, most of you guys are really on par with what you can expect to make in an entry-level marketing job. And I'm like, no, don't sign me up. Like, I don't want that. Don't sign me up. I'm already making that much money. I would be stupid to just like cut in half my capacity to do what I'm doing now so that I can go take a real job. So at that point, I was like, obviously, I need to do this. And so I was in a very fortunate position where I had the income. I already had like that safety net built, and I didn't have a ton of student loans. I had some really great scholarships and luckily some family help, but that like I was in a very fortunate position where I could just be like, nah, I'm going to try my own thing. So I did made a very cliche moved to LA for a year right after college, and called it a day.
Oh, well, and what did people in like your hometown say when you were like, I'm gonna do social media? Like I turned down the job.
Yeah. People were kind of worried. Like especially my parents, they were like, are you sure? Like we support you, we love you, we believe in you, but like, are you sure? They were very concerned because it was still pretty new, right?
You had already made a salary.
Yeah, like, but they didn't like they couldn't wrap their heads around it because it wasn't really that much of a thing yet. Like this was 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
And so that was still very new. Like no kid was the way they are now. Like I want to be a YouTuber when I grow up. Like that did not exist yet. And
yeah, I was literally about to say that. Like kids literally write on their like kindergarten board, when I grow up, I want to be an influencer.
Yeah, that was not a thing. And so I remember I like showed my dad or like my PayPal like transactions or something, just be like, look, I promise it's real. And then they were like, oh, okay, well, good luck, honey. Like that was kind of thing. But I definitely dealt with I felt very much like an outsider in my own circles, in my own school, in my own hometown, leading up to that point. And I had some like other influencer friends and stuff, of course, by that point. But like when I first started, I literally got bullied when people found out about my Instagram account. And that was tough. Like I literally got like mocked and bullied about it. And I could have let that stop me and like let me retreat back into like fitting into the box. And I'm so glad that I didn't, because imagine, I don't know where I would be.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even though I think influencing and like, chasing that career is so much more accepted, I think people still fear the mock and the bully of like putting yourself out there. Or if you do and it's not successful online, like it's so public and you're putting yourself out so publicly and you're really evolving. And like, did you ever have fear to post or
I mean, once I knew people that I knew were watching, for sure. Like once that became a thing, then I was looking at everything from like a more critical lens. The first like 6 months, my page was anonymous. Like I don't think my face was even in my content. Like it was very anonymous. And so that was very safe, right? Like no one even knew who I was. I had back then, it was like really cute to have not your name, like to have a username. My first username was like very diet culture. I don't even want to say it, but my second username was Fit Girl Fuel. So like that was so cute. And so I once people found out, then I was like, then I started second guessing myself. But honestly, that became much worse later on when a lot of the like influencer gossip forums started, and once hate comments became more and more of a thing, then that's when I really became hyper aware of like, how can I make sure I'm being perceived the exact way that I want to be perceived? How can I make sure that I anticipate every negative thing that they could think about me based on this post or this YouTube video or whatever? And so I definitely went through a couple years of always being so hyper vigilant about like, how can I curate this piece of content, whatever it is, so perfectly that no one can say anything bad about me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How did you get over it? And what would you say to people that are in that space now, like with a big platform or tiny one?
Yeah. Honestly, I think on one hand, it's just exhausting because you're always trying to like overanalyze every little thing of like, well, what are they going to think about this? Or what could they say about this? And you hear like the hate comments playing in a loop in the back of your brain. And it's just like exhausting. So I think at a certain point, I just realized like it wasn't worth it. But also I tried so hard to anticipate like what people would think, what people would say. But the problem with trying to anticipate other people is like, so much of it was so irrational that like it couldn't even be anticipated. like even when I was trying my damnedest to like prevent any negativity or any judgment or whatever, it would still come. And so I just realized I was like playing a losing game, and that ultimately like it wasn't making me happy. It wasn't actually saving me from what I thought it was going to save me from. And then I came to a point where I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do me. Like then at that point, there's nothing left but to do what makes me happy and share what makes me happy and what makes sense for my business and for my brand. And strategically, I think there is a balance there, but like just realizing that it's a losing game. And like I've come to such peace with the fact that like what other people think of me is just none of my business.
Oh, I like that. It's not your business.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because I'm an actor, and like, we constantly get rejected. It's day after day after day of rejection. Well, we're in a strike, but that's a whole nother podcast. And people will say to me like, how do you, do that? And I'm like, you just get used to it. It just becomes part of it. And it's like nothing heals that but time and keep going for it.
Honestly, the reps. Yeah. And that's why when people tell me, they're like, oh, I just want to go viral and pop off and like become like an overnight success. I'm like, trust me, no, you don't. Because if you just go viral, like I think about the people, especially in my industry, who were like, came on the scene super hot, like saw their business blew up or their page blew up and they went viral and had all this quick success. They don't exist anymore. Like they last a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years top, and then fall off because they were so unprepared for the visibility, so unprepared for the eyeballs, the judgment, the negativity that comes with it. And that's not to say it's not worth it, because I 100% would choose it all over again. But like, I'm so grateful that even though I had like very early success and like got in at the right time, essentially, like that was very fortunate. But I'm glad that I've never been the person that like went viral on TikTok and all of a sudden had 1 million followers who thought they knew everything about me, because that level, that like just huge growth spurt is so dysregulating. And like there's nothing that can prepare you for understanding that there's like 1 million people who are consuming your every second of content and analyzing you and thinking about you. And 99% of people are amazing and so lovely and supportive. And I have like honestly a really great community, but the 1% feels really loud sometimes.
Yeah, because they don't care. They'll show up and yell.
Yeah.
You know, you make the move to LA because that's, I feel like, part of being an influencer. You like have to go. Or
the pilgrimage to Mecca.
Yes, it's like you do this, you get this many followers, you move to LA if you don't already live here. So tell us about your experience with Los Angeles.
Yeah, so I only lived there for 11 months. Didn't even finish our full year lease. Like we like burned a month of rent. And we're just like, we're leaving. Bye. I grew up in Minnesota. My husband and I both grew up in Minnesota. So LA from Minnesota is like very different. And to be honest, we went to LA because it seemed like the natural progression of things. Just like what you said of like, okay, I'm a successful influencer now. Like that's where the people are. That's where the things are happening. And I was in the fitness industry. So like Gold's Gym Venice is like the gym. Like that's where people go. And like that could be my gym. And that's where all the fitness YouTubers were. And I could collab with all of them. And so it was like, I went there as like a business opportunity of knowing that I had some friends already living there and there were all of these opportunities that I could like seize once I got there. And then B, just knowing that like I needed to get the F out of my hometown because it is one of those places that like people just never leave. And like if they're happy there, more power to them. This is like not a judgment thing, but I knew that if I didn't get out, like it would be too easy to just get sucked into doing the same thing forever. So I was like, okay, I'm leaving. I actually graduated college a semester early, like didn't even walk in my graduation. I was like, bye everyone, like see you never. I'm moving to LA. Like I was that person. And so when we got there, I think because I didn't really have a clear goal of like why I was there. I was just like, it just seems to make sense. Like, it just seems like I should be here was kind of my thing. I don't feel like it was a very positive experience for me. I feel like I felt this pressure and that like hustle energy and like the need to make shit happen. But like, I didn't know what I actually wanted. Like, I didn't really have any idea of what I was working towards other than like, keep making content, keep working with brands, keep going to the gym. Like, so I think that LA a little bit like chewed me up and spat me out.
That's okay. And like, it's probably not as much that dramatic, but like, it's okay for a place not to be right for you.
For sure. Yeah. And there's like no, like, I don't judge myself for it, but I do think that like LA can be such a cool place, but for me in that season of life, like I had never had no structure, right? Like I had just finished being in school my whole life and I was a really good student. And I thrived off of deadlines and grades and all that stuff. And then first like adulthood of having no structure, full-time, my own boss, doing my own thing in LA. It was just like so many new things that it was not a productive, healthy environment for me. And now I live in Austin, which is, you know, just the natural course of things moving from LA to Austin. But I did it before it was cool.
Pre-pandemic.
Yes. I moved here in like 2018, 2017. Yeah, beginning of 2018. So I've been here for almost 6 years.
So we're kind of talking a little bit about like, I guess, I don't want to say the darker side, but the gray zone of, you know, being in the influencer world. You mentioned that the influencer gossip forums were going on.
Yes.
How did you handle that? How did that come to your attention? You know, now it's like there are
social media channels about social media people. And like, it was different before. What was that like?
That was extremely distressing when I first like discovered it. I'm very like, I am an Enneagram 3, if you're into the Enneagram, which is, so I'm an achiever. I like I try really hard to do my best and put my best foot forward and do well and be a good person. Like I care a lot about that stuff. And I also care about recognition and validation and like to a fault. Right. And so, obviously I'd already seen, the occasional troll comments on like YouTube or Instagram or whatever of people just being negative. But the first time I discovered that there was like an entire forum dedicated to like talking shit about me, and this was maybe like over 5 years ago. I think this is when I was living in LA, and that was kind of when it was like at its peak. Not to say it doesn't exist anymore or that the current generation of people like don't experience this, but it was still pretty new at that point, and people were just so mean, and I just could not understand. Like, I think that's still the thing that the disconnect of like, how could you be so mean, but also like how can you want to spend your time and energy doing that? Like, I can't wrap my head around it. But when I first came across it, there was like a huge initiation of me having to process it and like come to my own conclusions of like, what do I believe about myself? Who do I feel like I am? Do I feel like there's some truth to what they're saying? Because it only cuts deep if you're like afraid that it's true, right? And so that like initiated me into this huge path of self-reflection and like identity work and building my confidence. And that, like, as much as it was so painful, and I kid you not, when I would like, the first time I read what people were saying, and I honestly couldn't even tell you. I think at that point it was like, oh my God, she's gotten fat since she finished her bikini competitions, or like her, like I have an autoimmune disease that has caused like asymmetry to my face, and people have been like, her face is fucked up and she's ugly and like blah blah blah, just mean things, like not even helpful, or they'd make assumptions about my income, that I was lying about how much money I was making, or that my boyfriend was my sugar daddy, like my husband now is like my sugar daddy, which is like, jokes on you, like he quit his job to move to LA with me, like all this stuff. So it was like the unfounded judgments were annoying because they were character attacks that were just like so unfounded. And then the other things were just like so mean that I had to really become so solid within myself and what I knew to be true about me. And so I think that was the blessing in disguise, but I still would not wish that experience on anyone because it sucked. Like, that's a hard way to learn that lesson.
Yeah, and you've handled it very positively, or now that's moved away. Like,
also, therapy helps.
Therapy's always great. Always good therapy, but like that was a very positive way to handle that, was to be like, if this is triggering a part of me, like, is that true?
Yeah. Really, I mean, don't get me wrong. There were definitely times, because at this point I'm like 21, 22, probably. Like, I don't think I had started going to therapy yet. So like there was for sure an era where like I would get a negative comment and I would immediately type back, like be defensive and like say, you're wrong because blah, 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 blah. And like not be mean back, but just like immediately be like, explain why you're wrong.
Yeah.
And now I just let people be wrong.
Yeah, whatever.
And I have a rule of like, if I do not owe anyone an explanation, or I do not explain myself to anyone who's committed to misunderstanding me. So if someone comes at me with a certain thing, like they're saying a certain thing or claiming a certain thing or saying whatever, and I'm making it sound like people are mean to me every single day, which is like not true at all. But on the occasions that this happens, like I can tell when someone genuinely has feedback or a question, or is wondering something from like a place of curiosity versus them just trying to have like a gotcha moment or be critical. And it's like, I don't explain myself to the people that are committed to misunderstanding me. Like, that's just so unproductive. And I learned that there's nothing you can say in your rebuttal. There's nothing that you can say in your explanation. There's nothing that you can change about your content or your brand or whatever that will get that type of person on your side. Like, it's just, it doesn't happen.
Yeah. So why waste the energy on some level?
Yeah.
And then you really start to evolve, and you're evolving very publicly.
Yes.
How did that perceive? I mean, you're in a completely different space now. I mean, even though the trackers for me are there. I mean, you talked about how you had an ebook right at the beginning, and now you've moved so much into being this boss of how to have your own online business and how you coach, like coaching these people who want to do the same thing. But that's really different from wellness and confidence and whatnot. What was that evolution like?
Well, I've realized looking back, like I've always been extremely entrepreneurial, and health and fitness and nutrition and stuff was just the first way that got expressed, because that's what I was interested in at the time. And that's what I was passionate about. And that was my like hyperfixation, my special interest, if you will, like at that time. And so that's how my like entrepreneurial spirit got expressed. But like, as I've reflected more and more on my origin story, I've actually realized, so I'm also a horse girl. Have a horse now. I'm an equestrian. I compete around the country and stuff. But like, as a little baby horse girl, there were these horse games on the internet where you like play against other people, almost like Neopets, but like for horse girls, think. And like, I now remembering back, I would even like graphic design people's like stable homepages in exchange for like in-game currency, right? So even back then, I was like a branding girly, like hustling on my horse game, right? And so like, I've just always found a way to like entrepreneur things. Like, I've always found a way to take my passion and monetize it and turn it into something. And so the entrepreneurial like thread has just always been there. And I knew that it was time to pivot from like the health and fitness, like coaching space and influencer space, because the journey was like, I was a full-time influencer. Then I just realized I was kind of like getting tired of waiting for brands to decide whether or not they were going to bring me on for a campaign, or if they were going to renew my contract, or what their affiliate terms were going to be, or what their sale was going to be that I could like plan for. And I wanted to have more control over my own income and my prices and how much money I was going to make. So between that and people requesting this from me, I started coaching people on their own fitness journey. So like a lot of beginners who were really just getting started. And I, at that point, had been like years and years deep into my fitness journey. And so I had plenty of like lived experience and done a ton of research. So I started coaching people there. And I, through like some mentorship and getting super nerdy about the entrepreneurial side and the systems and the sales strategies and stuff, I scaled that coaching business to multiple six figures. And I knew it was time to pivot to helping other people with their businesses when a ton of people were just asking me, like similar to the fitness coaching thing, like people noticed like, oh, Marie's like kind of leading the pack in terms of it. We can tell that she's using strategies that other people aren't using, or like she's more organized, or she's more intentional. Like this is not, she didn't just duct tape her business together. Like this is very on purpose. And then also B, I was having more fun, like nerding out over building funnels and like planning launches for my programs than I was for actually like serving my clients, which I was still doing my best to serve my clients, but like obviously they deserve better than that, than for me to be like, I'm going to be here with you now, but like I'd rather be like working on my content or whatever, right? So just realizing that like that's actually what made my business so fun, was like doing business, like doing the entrepreneur stuff. And so that was the point when I decided to start making the pivots. And I'm someone that's very much like, once I set my mind on something, you cannot stop me, and I'm doing it. And so I kind of like burned the boats and just pivoted. Like I literally was like, okay, I'm helping people with their businesses now. And I let my existing clients, like finish their contracts and stuff. But like, okay, this is a business page now.
Wow.
Welcome, everyone.
You just switched the whole page. And did that go over well? Were people fussy?
There was definitely there's like a subset of people who are like, who feel like no one should ever pay for business advice, which is like baffling to me. So I think like that subset of people was maybe upset. And then also just obviously anyone who loved my fitness content, which is amazing, like was not pleased. They were like, "Oh, I'm sad," or just like annoyed or whatever. And so at that point, but I was so committed. I was so excited about the new direction, and I like my following has still never hit the high that it was at when I like was finishing competing and stuff. Like I did lose a lot of followers, rightfully so though, right? Like I built this whole audience and this whole platform around health and fitness and confidence. And then I'm like, okay, I'm giving business advice now. This is a business page. So naturally, a lot of people did leave.
But it didn't matter because you were so driven into this and you were like, I've done it and I can do it again in this way, which is where your interest was anyway.
Right. Yes.
You are somebody who really came up through the rings of social media growing up. But a lot of people want to be where you are. Like, what does it really take to get there now? Like, how you've seen the space grow and change so much.
Yeah. I still think even though when I started, it was a very different time and it was like perhaps easier to grow a following, I still think that it rings completely true that like you have to love it so much that you would do it for free. Like, obviously there's a very real reality of like, we have to pay our bills. We have to put food on the table. We have to like live. But I don't think that people should try to become a creator, an influencer, whatever, have an online business purely for the money. Like there are much easier ways to make money than becoming a creator. There are much more predictable ways to make money. There are much less public ways to make money. But if you genuinely love creating, if you genuinely love building communities, if you genuinely love coaching or making products or educating people, whatever it is, like if you genuinely love it, then you have what it takes. But like it has to be that, the passion and the love for it, and also getting strategic. Like it's not going to cut it anymore to obviously throw the Valencia filter on your breakfast and like tell people what you ate, right? Like it needs to be more, and it has evolved so much. And I love how like creative and how much people have honed the craft of content creation over the years. It is absolutely amazing. But you have to be like in it. Like you have to be willing to practice. You have to be willing to look stupid at the beginning. Like your first content is not going to be good. It's just not. Like it's going to be embarrassing. I love the quote. I don't know who it's from, but it's like, if your first iteration of something isn't embarrassing, like you waited too long. And I am a huge believer in that. If you scrolled all the way back in my Instagram, which like don't, because there's over 6,000 posts, like your fingers will get tired. But if you scrolled all the way back, you would see that like my early content is so embarrassing. My first YouTube video is literally called like my obligatory awkward intro video. Like I literally titled it that, and I'm sitting in my like college bedroom on my bed recording it, I think on like my MacBook camera. Like everyone starts somewhere, but you're able to push through the cringe, and you're able to push through the times when you're not getting engagement, when you're not growing, when no one's caring what you say, when you feel like you're just yelling into a void. Like you're able to stick with it and push through that time because you genuinely love it, like because you're here for the process. And so the people who are in it for like, oh, I want to go on brand trips and I want to like just make money on the internet. Like, yes, those things are great, but that can't be the only, like that's just not going to sustain the work ethic that's required to do it. And I know that there are so many perks, and I know that there are other professions that are like harder, like backbreaking manual labor for sure. But like it is work. It's hard.
Well, and seeing you brought it up again, you know, what was your experience with the brand trips? Was it like as fun as they look to be,
So I never went on like the beauty brand trip. Yeah, I feel like those are like the epitome of like the brand trip. But I did go to like the equivalent in my industry was going to expos. So like there's fitness expos all around the world, like the Arnold Sports Festival, which is in like Columbus, Ohio, kind of lame. But that was like the biggest deal in the entire country all year. Every fitness influencer who anyone is there, and hopefully a brand brought you and you get to, so like the years that I went with the supplement company that I was a sponsored athlete with, and I would go to the booth for like a scheduled amount of time. People would wait in line to talk to me. People would like tell me their whole life story because they knew my life story, but I had no idea who they were. So they would like tell me their life story. We'd hug. Sometimes we'd like be crying. A few people would ask me for their autographs. So it was like a very crazy experience because most of the time I'm making my content. It's like me in my apartment with my phone and my computer, and like that's my experience of making content. And then when you actually see and like hug the human beings that it's impacting, is just wild. And also I like talking on the internet, but I'm actually an introvert. So it's like very just crazy it's very overwhelming. People like crying when they meet you, people saying, oh, I would have people be like, so my name's Marie Wold, but I would have people be like, Mary World, oh my God, I love you so much, you've changed my life. I'm like, you don't even know my name, how does this make any sense? Right. But okay.
So you've read it, so that's who they are to you.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was kind of my equivalent of like the influencer trip. And it's like, also the other weird thing is you would see all of these people who look a certain way on social media and portray themselves a certain way. And then you see them in person, you're like, oh, that's what they look like without all the filters. That's what they look like without all the Photoshop. Weird.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's ever going to go away about the internet. And I feel like each year we gain more and more understanding that what we put online isn't always 100% the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Yeah.
But, you're very into setting like big goals. And this space is like, I think what a lot of people would like to do, to have, money come in, have some financial like reins on it, but also like travel and, take days off and whatnot.
Yeah.
What is like behind the scenes look of like setting goals and actually achieving them to you?
Yeah. So for me, I've always reverse engineered. I shouldn't say always. At this point, I reverse engineer all of my goals based on what I want my life to look like. And that's something that I always encourage my clients to do. And they hear me say a million times, like, business gets to support life. And so whatever type of business you're in, or even career that you're in, like, I'm always thinking about how can I set goals that allow me to live the life and the lifestyle and have the experiences that I want to have. So like what I said earlier about being a horse girl, like something that when I got back into riding as an adult, this is when I like around the time I pivoted away from like Fitspo life. Like I started getting back into horses and taking riding lessons again and all this stuff. I realized I was like, oh, I don't like the way that I'm existing right now, spending 12 hours a day working, shooting content, editing YouTube videos, replying to content, talking to brands, blah, 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 like filming my workouts, all the things. I'm working like 12 hours a day. I don't have time to like do my passion of horses. Like I don't have time for that. So I need to make some changes. And gradually I started just like tweaking and refining my business to support like going to a couple lessons a week. And then I was like, this is not enough. I want my own horse. And then like it was riding 4 days a week, and then 5 days a week. And then I was traveling all over the country. And so gradually I learned that like you can build your business to be any shape, size, configuration to support literally any lifestyle that you want. And so I'm always reverse engineering my goals around that. So for example, when I was like, okay, at the start of this year, I was like, I'm going to do a 4-day work week. That was my goal at the beginning of the year. And I did that as a lifestyle goal, and then the business had to then support that. Or if I set a financial goal of like, I want my goal to be like the first time I set the goal for $1 million a year, it was like, I want a 7-figure year because I want to be able to buy a horse, or I want to be able to buy a house, and I want this car, and I want to travel to this place, and I want to have this much in savings. Like I'm always thinking about what is the impact of said goal. And I've become very careful of not just picking goals based on ego, because it's so easy to look at what other people are doing. It's so easy to move to LA because that's a natural next step. It's so easy to do the bikini competitions because that's what Fitspos do. It's so easy to like want to get a boob job, which I almost did when I lived in LA because all the fitness girlies are getting boob jobs. Like I found myself in that cycle so many times of like, what is the natural next step that like people do in my position, right? And so it'd be like chasing these financial goals or chasing certain brands or whatever it is, chasing a certain body type. That was always how I was setting goals initially. And it became this rat race, right? Of like, okay, I reached the goal and I like still feel empty. Like I remember stepping off stage at like my most successful competition when I was a bikini competitor, and I was still like, okay, like what am I going to eat after this? Because I'm so freaking hungry. Like that's all that I cared about. So I've learned to set goals based on what's going to fulfill me and make me happy. And I've become very careful of not just setting a goal based on what would be cool or what would look good on Instagram. And I have like a very Instagrammable life because I like really pretty things and I do fun things. But that's not, I've come to a place where it's not like, oh, how can I make this look good for Instagram, or how can I check the boxes of what a business coach should do, or check the boxes of what a Fitspo is supposed to be doing. And I truly, truly believe like I can have anything I set my mind to. Like I think that is one of my secrets to success, if you will, is like I genuinely believe that I could have anything that I wanted if I truly wanted it and I was willing to put in the work. Mm-hmm. So it's just getting clear on like, what do I actually want?
I can see how you got here. But, you know, for somebody who is just starting out and you have such good background in like market and sales, like what would you say to someone who's trying to grow a business online? Mm-hmm. What is the essential first step for them to take?
So I think it obviously is going to kind of depend on the type of business in terms of like the logistics of what you need. Like, do you need a website? Do you need products? Do you need a service? Do you need whatever? But honestly, before any of that even comes, is figuring out what problem can you solve for people? Like that is ultimately what any business is about, is solving problems for people. And that could be as big of a problem of like curing cancer, right? Like huge problem, solve world hunger. Like that is solving a problem. But also there are problems like I just saw this girl's viral video about like she made a straw that you don't have to pucker your lips, so like prevents lip wrinkles, right? Like that is such like a random small problem that like I didn't even know that I had, right? But she's building a whole business of it on it. So it's like, what problem can I solve for people? And what am I so obsessed with that I'm willing to literally obsess over it every single day? Because that's what you're going to be doing in your business. And so like my job now is helping other women grow their businesses. I'm so obsessed with business and I'm so obsessed with helping women reach their potential that I will happily talk about it every single day. And I'm solving the very real problems of women craving financial freedom, hating their jobs, wanting more for their families, feeling stuck, feeling like they're not reaching their potential, feeling like they are capable of so much more, but they don't know how to get there, right? So it's like, what problems can I solve and what am I so obsessed with that I can talk about it all day, every day? And those are kind of your ingredients, like where those things overlap, that is your like profitable business idea, essentially, mixed with like, if we wanted to do 3 parts, mixed with like what people are actually willing to pay for. Like that's your profitability sweet spot. And that could be a product, that could be a service, that could be like an influencer business, like that could be so many different things. But always getting clear on those allows you to be like moving in the right direction. And I'll also caveat that with like, you don't need to have everything perfect, because the biggest thing that will create clarity is action. Like all the times that I've waited for clarity to come to me, I'm just sitting in analysis paralysis. Like that's not productive. But when I make moves, when I take messy action, when I try something on metaphorically, like, oh, maybe I'll try this. Maybe I'll see how this thing lands. Maybe I'll poll my audience. Do they want this? Like that's always the stuff that gets me so much clearer on what the next best step is versus like thinking on it and sleeping on it and marinating on it and obsessing over it, but like not actually doing anything, not actually seeing if it sticks.
Then what would you say to the people who, have been trying to get their business off the ground, but they quite haven't figured it out yet. Maybe it's not profitable or it's not where they wanted to be. What are the things they need to double check?
So this is going to sound really like biased and annoying because I'm a business mentor, but the game changed for me when I invested in mentorship, because having someone who has been where you want to go is priceless. Like, that allows you to bypass the trial and error phase. It allows you to collapse the time required to get where you want to go. And I was actually just talking to my friend about this earlier today. She's like, do you think that you would have gotten where you are without mentors, without coaches, without investing so heavily into those things? And I said, yes, I think I would have, because I'm so scrappy and I will make it happen one way or another, but it would have taken me so much longer. I bet it would have taken me at least 3 years longer to get where I am today if I hadn't had mentors. So I would say that is a cheat code. Not everyone wants to or is willing to do that or is able to do that at whatever point they're at. But if you're able to, find someone who has done what you want to do. Find someone who has walked the walk and can grab your hand and pull you along with them, because that will make everything so much easier. But we can also kind of extrapolate that of find those people. And even if you don't hire them, consume their content, listen to their podcasts, read their books, go to their live free things, whatever it is, absorb as much as you can, because success leaves clues. And the other tip, at risk of going on a huge tangent, other than mentorship, I think the other thing is so many people just don't know how to market. And the biggest mistake I see all the time is people not actually explaining the value of what they have to offer. Something I'm constantly talking to my clients about. And my clients are mostly coaches, service providers, people in the online space, course creators, that sort of thing. But they're always trying to sell their things by just telling people, this is what it is. This is what's included. These are the features. These are the specs. This is why it's cool, in my expert opinion, instead of getting inside the mind of their ideal customer, client, consumer, and explaining why they should care and why it's going to change their life and why it's going to solve problems for them and why it's going to make their life easier, make them happier, healthier, hotter, wealthier, whatever it is. We need to always be speaking the language of our end customer, consumer, client, and speaking to them about what they care to hear about. So an example would be a lot of my fitness coach clients, for example, they get very self-righteous about the word toned, because they're toned doesn't exist. You either gain muscle or you lose fat or you don't, or blah, 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 blah. And I get it. I used to be that person because I was in the fitness industry. But at the end of the day, I'm do your clients say they want to be toned? And they're yeah. I'm so say, get over yourself and say the word toned, because that's what your ideal client is looking for, right? And so it's always coming through that lens of what does my customer, what is my client, what is that person need to hear in order to make this a no-brainer? Yes. How can I say it in their language, in the words that land with them, in the way that makes sense to them? And sales is so much about not just explaining, here's what's included, here's why it's good, but painting that picture and having that emotional connection, telling stories or painting the picture of what's possible or resonating with their pain points and empathizing with them. That is what makes someone good at sales versus just being an advertiser.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, Marie, you are such a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about quite the array of things with us.
I know. I love this. I love a good range of convos.
Can you tell everybody where they can find you and more?
Yeah, so you can find me, my hub on the internet, my natural habitat is Instagram. So you can find me on there. I'm Marie E. Wold, WOLD. I also have a website where you can find all of my different programs and free resources, free workshops and a goal setting visualization. That's mariewold.com. No extra E, just MARIEWOLD. And then I also have a podcast that Marley was on called Make Bank, and that's just Make Bank with Marie Wold on any of your favorite podcast platforms.
Beautiful. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Guys, thank you so much for listening to Confessions of a Wannabe It Girl. If you like this episode, please don't hesitate to leave an Apple Podcast review or check us out on YouTube. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next Tuesday.